All right, here we go. The Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. And Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak, along with Armstrong Sims and Jack McKenzie, run the mothership. Jack's on his way to the Farrell Center for basketball media session. Scott Drew a little bit after 5, joined by our good friend Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com. He covers LSU. And I wish we could publish some of the text messages, Paul, that you and I get from Mike when it comes to
I don't wish that. There's a brotherhood of bond.
No,
there.
it's kind of like what happens in Vegas. Hey, Mike, thank you very much. Paul did a transfer portal. Who's been the most successful? A top 5 about a week ago. LSU seems to be obviously doing well, and they could even do better. Your thoughts about what they've done so far?
Well, it's by necessity. LSU's got a lot of holes to be able to field a team next season that's competitive. Obviously, you know, the way that Orgeron left the program, it's they've got to get some immediate help. And I do think they've done a darn good job. I still think we're waiting to see if they're going to bring a center in. But I pretty much think where they're at right now, you know, waiting for the Converse kid from Oklahoma State to find out what he's going to do. Last date of enroll is Thursday. But, yeah, I think that a lot of people are excited here, and then we'll wait to see how many spots are left over after next Wednesday with the high school kids, because I think they want to have, you know, maybe close to a handful of open spots to be able to use after spring football. You know, might there be another quarterback that they pursue? I still think they need to find a big-time center if they can get one from a Power 5 school somewhere, and then they can be on their way.
Mike, it's not just about quantity, which they needed. You're saying they have had some good quality, and that it's not just warm bodies to fill the spots to save the exodus? Well,
look, I think there's some very good football players here. You know, are they all going to translate? Do I see where there's a bunch of guys here right now that are going to be first or second team All SEC next year? I don't see that, but I do think right now there's some guys that can really help and possibly be starters. You've got to like the 2 DBs they got from Arkansas and Fouché and Brooks. You know, Bramlett was the starting punter for Notre Dame. So, you know, he could very well, you know, I take that back. You know, might he be a guy who could be one of the better punters in the SEC? Lacey, you know, has fought a little bit of injuries at wide receiver. You bring in a long snapper. You know, and Quentin Skinner's been a guy that's been fantastic and had a lot of a scratch in our head when they brought him in. Then they got the Frazier kid early in December, who was, you know, an All-American as a freshman. He's the one kid that I probably is the cream of the crop that a lot of people have been talking about just because of the new wave of guys in the portal. But, you know, Frazier last month was a biggie because he was, you know, an All-American at FIU.
What were your thoughts on Noah Kane? I know out of high school he had a much bigger profile, was big 5-star type of talent, and then goes to Penn State and was okay. But your thoughts on Noah Kane and the addition of running back?
Well, he is coming off an injury, and I remember when he was being recruited out of high school, and there was a big deal about LSU was recruiting him, Tyrion Davis-Price, and John Emery. And when John Emery decommitted from Georgia and then let it be known that LSU was going to be his destination, then that's when Noah Kane fell off LSU's board and went to Penn State because he didn't want to be a part of a 3 running back class. And so now he's going to be in the fold with the 2 guys that were part of that year. And then there's, you know, I still think we're waiting to see what's going to happen with Trevante Citizen from Lake Charles Prep. LSU's battling Florida, Auburn, A&M, and others for him, you know, high school prospect. And then there's still a lot of people whispering out there about maybe Logan Diggs at Notre Dame is maybe someone down the road that to be paying attention to because he originally prepped at Rummel out of New Orleans.
Mike, appreciate always your insight. Is there still any true smoke or legitimacy that Caleb Williams has LSU among his last 1 or 2?
Yeah, I'm not buying that. I would be shocked. We'll see. But that people were having some fun with that last week, and that wasn't one that I bid on.
Good. Well, that's why I asked you. Thank you. Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com with us on Sikkim 365 Radio.
Mike, when it comes to quarterback, you said you may think that'd be after spring. How do you think it shakes out right now after this kind of transfer portal wave of the depth chart?
Well, look, Miles Brennan obviously went into the depth chart, chose to come back to LSU. You got Garrett Nussmeier, and then the 5-star fantastic high school quarterback Walker Howard that enrolled at midterm. So you'll have those three in spring football. We don't know on Miles Brennan what kind of shape he's going to be in, how healthy he is. And even if he is healthy, you don't know how long he can go in a season. He's had a bit of bad luck, and I'm not throwing him under the bus, but that's a scary situation. So, look, there's some scenarios here where, and we've now seen it a couple of times at LSU in the last handful of years, where you think that the quarterback room is as good as it's ever been because you're sitting there this time of year with 4 quarterbacks, and then by mid-August you're down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you wait to see what the competition looks like, who's healthy, who's distancing themselves, who's maybe disgruntled or not liking their lot, and then also paying attention to the transfer portal because you're going to have a lot of battles at colleges all around the country. And, if you think you can better yourself, you bring in another quarterback. So, I know Walker Howard is a heck of a competitor. I personally think he's better than all the quarterbacks on the LSU roster. But he is a true freshman. He needs to get a little bit heavier. So ideally you would redshirt him. So I don't know how they're going to view that going forward, but, the outlook for the LSU football team next year, I don't know what it's going to be until we see what the final roster is going to be after spring football. It's just as soon as you think you're going to have a handle on it, then you're going to have a couple of kids hit the portal.
I know that'll make this question impossible to answer entirely then, Mike, because we'll have to wait and see ultimately what the roster looks like. But just what have been sort of your initial impressions of Brian Kelly, how he's reworked things, and what's maybe been most notable to you that's different from what you've seen there in Baton Rouge as of late?
Well, I think LSU fans are going to have to get used to the fact that he is different. He is more, I hate the word figurehead, but I think he likes to be a closer in recruiting. I don't know that he's going to be popping his head into every high school in the state, including high schools that don't have prospects. I think he's more of a guy that wants his coaches to go out and recruit, bring them in for visits, and then that's where he likes to close the deal. But maybe he alters his approach because of how competitive it is down here. We'll wait and see. But I think one of the things we have seen, he's very methodical. And, of course, y'all got one of the Polian brothers down there in Waco, and I think he's leaning heavily on Brian Polian here is also a special teams coach, and as far as evaluating and offering talent. And I think we're going to see a lot of regular order as far as junior days next month once we get past next Wednesday. So we're seeing a steady stream of scholarship offers going to out-of-state kids right now. But I think a lot of us are just kind of sitting around waiting to see once he goes deep dive on the Louisiana kids, because I think that's the one thing we're seeing is that, and I bet you every other school in the country is probably going to have similar vibes, that you're more likely to have success holding on to the kids from your state when things go bad or maybe they don't like where they're at on the depth chart. They're going to be more likely to stick it out at their home school than if they came in from out of state. So I think there's going to be a lot more significance put on signing Louisiana kids and keeping the class above 75% Louisiana prospects rather than thinking the grass is greener out of state.
Hey, Mike, I know you got to go, and we do too, but I want to Jeff Grigas, who Baylor brought from LSU, Director of Football Operations. I've heard he's a rising, I don't want to call him rock star yet, but he's coming up the ranks. And I had somebody in athletics tell me that. And Colin D'Angelo, a couple of guys that Randa brought with him, after he's been here for a couple of years. Which of those two do you know the best, or are both of them really good hires?
I think both of them are really good. I'm familiar with both of them. Colin D'Angelo, I know Orgeron used to joke around and call him Mr. GQ. Yeah, both of them are hard workers, and I know specifically with Colin D'Angelo, very involved in recruiting, works quarterbacks nationally, and look, Dave Aranda knows who works and who are the smart guys, and he's brought in a bunch of those type of guys that he liked and respected when he was here in Baton Rouge.
Mike, thank you, buddy. As always, Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com on LSU and the portal, what they've done, and they still have some work to do, as he mentioned. They lost probably more attrition than even Oklahoma, who we know lost a lot from who not only players on the roster, but their class as well. When we come back, Jeff Howe, Texas, of course, has